Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 4:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, 4:30, Ian Pryor with an update on what's happening in Loudoun County with the school board there, trying to stop parents from speaking at those school board meetings. And then Laura Reese is here at 5 o'clock from the Heritage Foundation. We talked to her about the state of our border, which is in total chaos today, as it is, it seems, every day, as well as a gigantic spending package that Congress is looking to slam through at this hour. A lot going on. We'll discuss with Laura, and we'll talk to you at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Fox News headline, the Biden administration has finalized a crackdown on gas cars, forcing more than half of all new car sales to be electric by 2030, by the end of this decade. They want to compel you to get into one of these newfangled golf carts. For more on that, Jason Isaac is joining us. He's the founder and CEO of the American Energy Institute, and he's on the phone. Hello, Jason. Good to have you with us, sir.
Hey, Vince. Great to be back on. Thanks for having me.
How tough are these new regulations? How different are these?
Well, actually, some of them have been delayed, which I guess is a positive sign. So it's like you don't have to die earlier. You can die a couple of years later by being locked in your home and not being able to get food and
Sure.
Freezing to death, or if you're in a fire because your EV is on fire in the garage. It's just a delay tactic, but also a tactic to appease Biden's donors, his leftist donors that really want to see this happening. But the facts of the matter are, demand is dropping, support is waning for electric vehicles. Ford is slashing production numbers, GM slashing production numbers. Almost every automobile manufacturer except for Tesla is slashing manufacturing numbers because the demand's just not there, and they're losing their tails on the sales of these vehicles.
Yeah, but we're being sold that this idea that it's an environmental emergency, therefore we have to push EVs on everybody. But if I recall correctly, which I do because I'm staring at the news article from March of last year, there was a study put out and cited in the Wall Street Journal that indicated that actually these electric vehicles, especially because of how much they weigh, that their brakes and their tires, which get worn out really easily, release nearly 2,000 times more particle pollution compared to modern tailpipes, which, of course, through the benefit of catalytic converters, there's very clean air coming out of your tailpipe if you have an internal combustion engine. So is this really better for the environment to force everybody into these heavy electric vehicles?
No, not at all. The law of unintended consequences is undefeated, and this is just another one that they think they know what's best for us, and they won't let the market work appropriately. I heard an electric vehicle lobbyist say that during the first 2 months of the COVID lockdowns, with 50% fewer cars on the road, air quality improved so much in the United States that we needed to force everybody to go to electric vehicles. Well, I directed research to be done with the Texas Public Policy Foundation and found that in cities throughout the United States, the air quality with 50% fewer cars on the road got worse because we've become world leaders in clean air. Yeah, you heard me right. It got worse in a lot of cities around the United States. It was negligible. Places where it got better, China and India. And we've been world leaders at clean air in this country. Over the last 5 decades, we've reduced pollution nearly 80%. It's nearly indistinguishable from natural levels. Going all electric is actually going to add more pollution, as you said, from the tire wear and the brake dust.
So obviously this is not about helping the environment. What is it about? Why is there such an overzealous push by the people that have the power right now to force us into vehicles that we don't want?
Well, you've got this international influence, and I call it the China, agenda. They're trying to force us and scare us with climate hysterics, which aren't true at all. It's a cult, and the cult is bending the knee. And you've got these multinational funding flowing into companies and networks like the Ceres Network, that's former Obama administration officials leading this nonprofit, doling out millions of dollars around the country, getting financial institutions like BlackRock to be a part of their network, to force the companies that they invest in to buy EVs and help drive this EV narrative to the smallest, localist levels of government, so that everybody, bends the knee. And it's working quite well as a marketing gimmick. Unfortunately, it's just a scam, and all it's doing is leading to higher costs. I published research just late last year that shows that you and I are paying nearly $50,000 for every electric vehicle sold.
To subsidize those EVs. Now,
Yeah, it's the subsidies, the cost of ratepayers, and if you buy an internal combustion engine vehicle, they're absorbing nearly $20,000 of the cost of every EV sold.
It's unbelievable. So the other piece is that, the federal government likes to rely in part, and state governments definitely rely on gas taxes. For, if you have an internal combustion engine, you have to stop at a gas station and you're paying taxes on every gallon of gas that you use. Those EVs don't fill up the same way. How are they going to take it out of us? Because the government's never going to be like, oh, well, I guess nobody's going to pay those taxes. What's going to happen there?
Yeah, so you don't collect the fuel taxes, and you've got a vehicle that's several thousand pounds heavier. Our bridges and our roads and our parking garages were not designed to handle that weight. That's why there are some cities in the U.S. that are banning charging stations in garages because of the fire hazards, and they're also banning electric vehicles in garages because of the weight. The garages weren't designed to those specs. So it's just, again, law of unintended consequences. They're not thinking this through. We should let the markets work because you're right. We would lose our highway funding. Nearly half of it would disappear.
Well, no, you know what'll happen. They're gonna force you to report your mileage on your taxes every year. That's what they're going to do.
No,
they're going to tell you have to, and then they're going to charge you for
it. Yeah, the kill switch they're talking about putting in your cars is to kill you. I mean, it's to crush you financially because they want to charge you for every single mile that you drive. And those high mileage drivers, the least among us, people that have been forced out of cities because of Democrat policies have risen the cost so much they can't afford to live where they work, so they have to move further away. Those are the ones that are going to be crushed the most. That's why there's a lawsuit in California. It's 200 civil rights organizations, the people that don't ideologically align with me. These are leftist people that are suing the state of California, saying that their policies violate the Civil Rights Act, that they have a disparate impact on communities of color in California because, again, they're having to be forced to move away from the cities where they work and where they used to live because the environmental policies are crushing them with higher costs of everything.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, just to make sure people understand, I'm not a hater of electric technology. I think so much of it is pretty cool. In fact, a bunch of my lawn equipment is now electric, and it works great for me. But I am against being compelled into any of this for sure. And Jason Isaac, what kind of time do we have to be able to turn this around? It seems like every time the government pursues something, it's very hard to claw it back.
Yeah, and this will probably be litigated and hopefully killed. We'll see what happens on November 5th later this year, but hopefully this is scaled back and we actually start to move back in the right direction. We've got to eliminate this EV multiplier credit, which is where Tesla got nearly $2 billion of revenue selling those credits to other automobile manufacturers because they can't compete with a distorted market based on policies from the federal government. That's what's driving up the cost of internal combustion engines. And I love electric vehicle technology. That's great. They're a gadget just like my cell phone and my computer. I don't want to pay for someone else to have that luxury.
Totally. And then finally, the actual energy that's generated for electric vehicles, correct me if I'm wrong, but almost entirely fossil fuels, right?
Yeah. It's globally, it's 82% of the energy generated is from hydrocarbons, oil, gas, coal, some nuclear in there as well. In the U.S., it's a little bit lower than that. But yeah, you've got a coal-fired car. It's powered by coal, nuclear, natural gas. As a license plate cover I saw said can't roll without oil, gas, and coal, which I loved because it was an oil and gas executive driving a Tesla. It's just hilarious. And when you talk about the electricity required to charge one, you plug a Tesla into a supercharging station, it's pulling the equivalent of a small grocery store off the grid. That's a lot of electricity. You hook up 4, it's the equivalent of a Walmart supercenter. That's how much electricity they're pulling off of the grid. We don't have the infrastructure it is right now. I mean, states are starving for electricity as it is. We have blackouts in California and Texas. Yep. And it's not going to happen.
No. I mean, I'm always on my daughter about leaving the lights on in the hallway. Can you imagine charging a grocery store every night? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Jason Isaac, thank you, sir, founder and CEO of the American Energy Institute. Really appreciate your time today.
Great to be on. Thank you.
Good to talk to you. Yeah, that's nuts. That is Looney Tunes. All right, let's see here. I've got Chris calling in from Marshall now, line 2. Chris wants to weigh in on this spending package. Democrats and Republicans working together to ram it through right now, very quickly before tomorrow night. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Vince. I want to weigh in on everything, man. How much time do we have? I've got a position or a point that's going to go over about as popular as a pork chop in a synagogue. Here goes. This is not a partisan thing. This is not within the budget, and I can prove it irrefutably and inarguably very easily. If this was just something that the left is doing by throwing all this stuff in these bills, some Republican somewhere that's smarter than me, and that ain't hard to do, would put a Trojan horse or an Easter egg in one of these bills that says something like term limits or balance the budget or outlaw abortion or whatever. They could do something extremely outrageous.
Yeah.
And slip it into these 5,000-page bills to get rammed through and say, you voted for it.
Right.
That would end this nonsense tomorrow. But they all play this game, man. This is the way that they do it, and it's criminal.
Yeah, it's totally criminal. And by the way, I just so I'm clear, I'm looking at some of the coverage here to say, okay, what did Republicans get out of this deal? As Chris is pointing to, if Republicans, why is it that it's all these left-wing priorities are the only things jammed into over 1,000 pages of a $1.2 trillion spending bill? The New York Times claims that Republicans got the following. They inserted a provision to defund UNRWA, that's the terrorist funding wing of the United Nations, which, by the way, even the Biden administration's already paused funding because they discovered that a bunch of the UNRWA employees were involved in the terror attack on Israel on October 7th.
We'll leave that up to Kamala's daughter-in-law to fundraise for them.
Yeah,
right?
That's exactly right. Kamala's stepdaughter is doing that.
Remember when $6 billion was absolutely inconceivable for a border wall?
You know something? I'm so glad you said that. Because, you know who else said that is the man you talked to when you called in. Corey and Ganimard always reminds me of this. He says every time.
I love Corey. He's a great guy.
Corey said to me, when we were talking $1.2 trillion on the break here, he's like, every time I hear these numbers, I think the wall only cost $6 billion.
Someone said the wall's not. Somebody argued with me. They said, "Oh, the wall's not the solution. The wall's not the solution." I said, "I want you to drive to Warrenton with no windshield in your car." What? Well, you don't need a windshield. People ride motorcycles all day long. Take all the glass out of your car and drive it. Yeah. The wall is not the solution. It is a component to a whole system, but it is a crucial component, man.
Yeah, and it's a lot harder to repeal than an executive order. If the next president, you got to do some work to take down a wall, which is why it's nice to have one.
One more thing that when we hear about green policies, the green they're referring to is money. It isn't the environment.
That's for sure. Chris, thank you. I appreciate the call and for your patience today on hold. Let's see here. I've got Brad calling in from Fairfax on the green energy scam. Hello, Brad. Line 1, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir.
Hey, Vince, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you great.
Okay, I would never buy an EV for an entirely different reason.
What's that?
They're death traps. They're death traps. They get hit. They bust into flames. I have a friend who's a fireman with the Fairfax County Police Department. And a couple months ago, he literally told me that it takes their flame. An EV burns so hot, it takes 5 times the amount of flame retardant solution to put the fire out.
Wow.
As it does with an internal combustion engine.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that much. That's incredible.
Hate having to try and put those things out. It's really hard, apparently.
Wow. All right. Well, that's yet another reason why there's a superior option.
I've seen videos on Facebook where they're running all these different running trucks into all these different vehicles, and they run them into a bunch of internal combustion engine vehicles, and of course the car gets smushed and there's a little smoke and everything. And then when they get to the Tesla, they run the truck into the Tesla, and the thing immediately bursts into flames. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, there you go. That's compelling. Thank you, Brad. I appreciate the call there. I've got Carlos calling in from Purcellville now, line 3. Carlos, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. How you doing?
I'm good, sir. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm one of these EV owners.
Yeah.
And I just had to renew my registration, and they tacked on a highway fee to cover the gas revenue that they're losing on the gas tax.
This is in Virginia.
In Virginia, correct.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so they're already taking a pound out of you. When you do this, do you have to denote your mileage every year? How much mileage you're using, Carlos?
No, it's just a standard rate of $75 a year when you renew your registration.
Yeah, my guess is it's not going to stay that way forever. It's going to keep going up. They're going to get it out of you.
Yes.
Carlos, thank you. That's an interesting point here. So, yeah, the government's already trying to figure out ways to take the money out of you. They're like, oh, yeah, take an EV, and then we'll take more of your cash. Nice. 422. Speaking of the green energy craziness, there was a hearing yesterday in the United States Senate. The left brought in a guy who's a skier. He looks like a skier. Long hair. Yo, dude. The climate, we got to save it, man. Senator Kennedy had some questions for the expert witness.
What is carbon dioxide?
I went to high school, but that's carbon dioxide is a gas.
Okay.
I'm not a professional to talk about carbon dioxide so much, but
Well, you want us to abolish it, right?
no, there's always going to be carbon dioxide.
Right. So what is it you want us to do?
I
Let me back up, because I want to, you're here as an expert. Tell me more about what carbon dioxide is.
I'm here as an expert cross-country skier who sees the changes in my winters and the landscape that I live in Alaska. And so carbon dioxide is what I see it as is, it's a gas that exists in our atmosphere. And
What, is it the major part of our atmosphere? Or?
it's a huge part of our atmosphere, yes.
It's actually a very small part of our atmosphere.
Well, okay. But, yeah, I don't know. What are you asking specifically?
Well, you say we need to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. I'd like to know first if you know what it is. You want us to abolish fossil fuels?
I never said that.
You never have said that?
No.
Okay. What do you think we ought to do with fossil fuels?
What will we do with fossil fuels?
Yeah.
What kind of expert is this guy? Did he win a contest? Are they just letting anybody testify now? Hey, you, come on in. You want us to get rid of carbon dioxide? What's that? You're perfect. You're totally perfect. It's 429. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 4:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up today, Laura Reese joins us. We'll talk the border crisis with her, as now we have images of foreign nationals blasting through Texas National Guard today, just shoving their way into the country. And we'll also talk to her about this big $1.2 trillion spending package Congress is trying to ram through right now, complete with more funding for the out-of-control Department of Homeland Security. A lot to get to. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Meanwhile, Loudoun County, Virginia, the scene of so much drama over these past few years. That's where the Loudoun County School Board is trying to stop parents from speaking at their school board meetings. And if they do speak, they want to prevent them from having camera time. They don't like that these parents and their thoughts are getting attention. For more on this, let's bring in Ian Pryor. He's a senior advisor to America First Legal and has been all over these Loudoun County issues. Ian, great to have you back with us, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Vince.
How is it after all these years, after all these scandals involving the Loudoun County School Board, they decided, you know what? Let's just make it worse for ourselves again. Let's just start banishing parents from speaking.
It's really, I don't want to say impressive, but it is an impressive display of stupidity on their part. I've said this before. I don't know where they're getting their legal advice, but just about every step of the way they have failed. Whether it's their former superintendent, who they could have fired well before they did, but said no, we're going to hold on to that guy, or school board members in private Facebook groups going after parents speaking at school board meetings. Not releasing an independent report on the sexual assaults when then they were forced to release that independent report by a judge. This is just another in a long line of things that if it ever gets to court, they will find that they have violated the constitutional rights of parents by denying them the ability to express themselves, on camera. Hey, they're giving them the opportunity to comment, right? They're putting the cameras out there. That is something they've traditionally done. Now, if they make a decision to take that away, and that is based on the viewpoint of the speakers or the vast majority of the speakers, that is unconstitutional.
Yeah, they're just embarrassed that people are being critical of them, so they're trying to hide it. They want to hide the criticism from the public. So as of last week, the Loudoun County School Board voted to turn off the cameras during the public comment period for fear that the public would hear from their neighbors. I mean, so how long is that going to last? No cameras for public comment?
Yeah, well, it's no coincidence, I think, that they made this move after you started having new members of the community that really hadn't been to school board meetings before to speak up against the bathroom policy, the pronoun policy, the transgender policy 8040. You had members of the Muslim community, members of the Hindu community,
Yes.
all showing up now and giving speeches about this. And right after that, they say, we want to make sure that we can just paint the parents that are upset as the white, Christo-fascist, Catholic, evil, WASP parents, as opposed to the reality, which is that it's a diverse group of people that are going out there and saying, yeah, this is not something that schools should be doing.
This is a smart point. So what they're scared of is not just the criticism being seen publicly, but they're scared for racial reasons that the criticism is seen publicly. Because among the people who are criticizing the Loudoun County School Board are Hindu people and Muslim people. They're coming out and they're making these claims, and Loudoun County wants to conceal this.
Exactly. They want to be able to have that same talking point that they've, consistently trot out and have their little strike force of keyboard warriors on the outside, talking about this is just angry, white, racist, insurrectionist. I mean, you just throw in whatever you want, right? That's what they want to portray parents as.
So as I understand it, Nick Minnock, who's of course from WJLA, and he's just fantastic. He's been all over this. Is the Loudoun County School Board meeting as we speak? They're meeting right now?
So it's a committee. It's a 3-person legislative and policy committee. It's unclear, they're debating public comment. They're talking about potential changes to public comment. We've heard a lot of different things. I'm not sure what's true or not, but I've heard things like they're going to limit public comment to, 4 times a year, right? Once a quarter, which of course, now that they've shown their true colors, now that they've gone out there and said, well, we don't want any more Jerry Springer moments, and we don't want people going out there and getting their, 30 seconds of fame. All right, well, now pretty much everything that you do to restrict public comment, it's going to be clear that this is either at best content discrimination, at worst viewpoint discrimination, and they're going to find themselves in hot water in court if they continue down this path.
I noticed that the people who support censorship of the public are the Democrat-supported candidates on the committee. Is that a coincidence?
Again, not a coincidence, right? I mean, it's pretty clear that this whole thing is motivated by politics. And, look, I don't love everything that I hear when somebody goes up to speak at a school board meeting, right? A lot of people go there and they say some things. I'm like, that's, I don't agree with that, or that's over the line, or what. But, hey, they have the right to say it to the school board to express, their support for a policy that the school board is doing, just like people have the right to go express their opposition to a policy. That is what, the public function of the public body is for. And that is what public comment is for. And they'll say, well, these school board meetings last so long. Well, yeah, you spend like an hour coming up with proclamations, right? Like, April is chocolate peanut butter month, appreciation week, or, it's crazy.
Yes. You
can't sit there and say that our meetings are too long because of public comment and then spend all this other time on virtue signaling and saying, well, we need to keep that in there so that, all the chocolate and peanut butter feels good about themselves.
It's such a weird thing, because if you told me about this 10 years ago, I'd be like, what in the world? A school system that doesn't care about the parents, in fact, has active contempt for them? And these are, by and large, parents showing up to these school board meetings, expressing themselves. What is the message here in terms of the Loudoun County School Board's attitude towards the parents of the children that are in their care?
Yeah, I mean, it's really quite shocking. That is their job, right? I mean, their focus is administering a school division and doing it on behalf of the taxpayers and the parents that send their kids there. And they are far more focused in acquiring power. First, they'll campaign on transparency, right? And then they get the power and they say, no more transparency. We know what we're doing better than you do. And we don't like being told that anything we're doing might be problematic. So go pound sand, right? And then you go and say, well, all right, well, what about things that have to do with my child? If, they put these gender support plans and they say, well, you don't have a right to know about that either. So we're not going to tell you about that. And you can't come to the school board and complain about it. So you can't go to school and say, I want to know this stuff. They'll say no. And then you can't now go to the school board and speak about it because they're going to just shut you down or limit you, once a year or twice a year or whatever it may be. And and again, like you watch the average school board meeting, and I can't tell you just how ridiculous some of the things that they're doing are, that have nothing to do with their job function.
Governor Youngkin responded to this, talking to Nick Minnock at WJLA. He said that he's going to work to make sure that he can preserve parents' ability to have voices to the school board that are seen and heard, because I know who the school boards work for, and that's parents, said Governor Youngkin. He's right about that. What should the governor do here, and what kind of power can he wield? Is it possible, for instance, for them to strip funding from a place like Loudoun County Schools until parents and citizens are adequately represented at these meetings?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things in his wheelhouse. I do wonder, on the civil rights, the Human Rights Act, if what we're looking at is, or even under the Constitution, right? What is the Attorney General's power? What is the governor's power? I don't necessarily have an answer quite yet on that. But the bottom line is that, as I've said, this is a violation of the First Amendment rights of, Loudoun County community members. And whether it's the federal Constitution or the Virginia Constitution. So the question is, what can the governor do to enforce Virginia's constitutional rights? And, I'm not quite sure that power flows to the Attorney General or not. It might. Certainly would flow to the Loudoun County Commonwealth Attorney. So there's a couple of different options that I think that they're going to have to look pretty strongly at to see this kind of thing cannot happen. And I'll tell you, you look at some of the other states around the country, and Massachusetts, right? Liberal Massachusetts, of all places, had a very similar case that made it to the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts, where they created a restriction saying, you can't be mean during public comment. And the SJC said, no, you can't do that. That's content discrimination. That is unconstitutional. And so it's one of those areas where when you actually get to court, generally, even more liberal judges, they'll look past the substance of the debate that sort of triggers the issue, and they'll say, look, you can't do this, right? Whether you're silencing conservatives or
right.
or the left, like you cannot do that,
Yes.
right? We are a society that, in public forums like this, values public debate. And when you start shutting that down, you're going to find yourself on the wrong side of the law.
Right, and if my memory serves correctly, I think it was Loudoun County where what ends up happening sometimes is that these public comment periods are actually corrupted because the left-wing school board members will tip off left-wingers and left-wing organizations that, hey, the sign-up period for the public comment thing is open now. You get in there before the rest of the public finds out, and then they stack the deck in the public comment period.
Well, if you go back 3 years to the June 22nd, 2021 school board meeting, right, the one where Scott Smith got arrested,
right,
that was going to be the one where they start debating policy 8040. Now, forever, you'd sign up on a Friday, right? The Friday before the school board meeting, you would sign up, and that's how you get into public comment. Except that day or that week, they decided they were going to open it up on a Thursday. Now, nobody that was showing up in opposition to that policy, that wanted to speak in opposition to that policy, knew about that until maybe an hour and a half had gone by, right? And then you see, if you go back and look at that meeting, well, the first 17, 18 speakers are all supporting the policy.
Right.
Right? So that was cooked in there, and then they said, well, the next day was Juneteenth. Like, come on. Like, we know exactly what you were trying to do. You were trying to cook the books and get your supporters in there first, get the news cameras capturing them, and hopefully everybody got bored by the time they got to number 18.
Yeah, big time. All right, so what can be done in Loudoun County? What kind of energy is there right now, Ian Pryor, among the parents? I know they've done so much. They've had to fight so many things with this school board. Is there going to be some useful patriotic heckling going on at some of these school board meetings? Are people going to be protesting outside? What do we expect?
Yeah, well, the next school board meeting is Tuesday, so obviously it comes during spring break, so we'll see what kind of attendance is there. But there are a lot of parents that are ticked off because one of the things that's coming up is a debate on whether to adopt the governor's model policies or not. So conveniently, these public comment changes are coming before that happens. Once again, showing us exactly what they are up to. So there's been a lot of angst building over the school board on a variety of things, but that policy, the governor's model policies and 8040 is still there, and people are getting very frustrated. And you now add this to the mix, I could certainly see these meetings becoming sort of go-to events again, even though I guess they won't be must-see events because they don't want, people to be able to express themselves beyond the four corners of that room.
And by the way, people should capture this on their own cameras too. Do whatever you can. Get those cameras up in the air and capture this. If the government doesn't want you to see it, you still have a right to record it. This is a public meeting. And record this thing and share it with the rest of us. That's a public service. Ian Pryor, man, always so grateful for all of your work on this issue and so many others. Thank you so much for your time today, sir.
All right, thanks a lot.
That's Ian Pryor, Senior Advisor at America First Legal, that is, and just all over the Loudoun County stuff for years now. And, the school board, we're trying to avoid a Jerry Springer-type environment. Really? You're trying to avoid a Jerry Springer-type environment. How come you people are the ones pushing the freak show? You say the parents are the Jerry Springer types? You're the ones putting boys into girls' bathrooms and then telling parents to shut up. That sounds like the Jerry Springer side of the equation, quite honestly. Let me take a call here. I've got Cole calling in from Stafford now, line 2. Cole, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir.
Hey, Vince. How's it going?
Good.
So at the end of the day, I understand you're getting weird stuff coming from the Loudoun County School Board. But at the end of the day, it is still the voters voting crazy. And you can't complain when you get crazy results from voting for crazy.
Yes.
So stop voting for crazy.
Amen.
They do it locally, they do it statewide, and they do it nationally. They are the stupid ones. At the end of the day, they're the dumb ones that keep voting for crazy. You can't complain and whine and cry when you get stupid policies up and down the line from the left.
Damn straight. I totally agree with you.
You gotta suck it up and say, okay, I got to stop voting crazy instead of voting D.
Amen. I mean, and this is one of the reasons why they want to shut the cameras off, by the way, Cole, because they want to keep people voting in an ignorant way for all these people over and over and over again. Well, if we shut the cameras off, we stop all the criticism. We don't let people see the Muslim and the Hindu parents and the Christian parents all getting together and criticizing us, then maybe they'll keep voting for us. So that's part of the game there. But, Cole, you're totally right. You do get what you vote for.
You got to show up at the ballot box. You got to do your due diligence and stop voting for crazy. Amen.
Thank you, Cole. Yeah, overwhelm the election, please, this year. I don't care where you live in this country. I realize, we've got listeners all over the country. This is a D.C. metro area radio show, but we do have people listening all over the country. If you're in California, get every friend you can. Actually, in California, ballot harvesting's legal, so do it. Ballot harvest every damn ballot you can and overwhelm the election this year. Overwhelm the election. That's the mission for anybody who cares about this country. In the face of all of the meddling, all of the nonsense, all of the interference, all of the suppression, overwhelm it. And get rid of these people, the Loudoun County School Board. They're little tyrants. What does Chris Plant say? Give them a thimbleful of power? Yeah, a little tiny thimble. Total tyrants in Loudoun County. We can't have parents criticize us on camera. What are we, nuts? So they go full North Korean on you. 451. Mark is calling Landover Hills, line 3 now. Mark, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, what's happening, buddy? Good job as usual.
Thanks, Mark.
Hey, Vince, I just wanted to say this, man, and I think people are waking up about this, but there seems to be a common thread in here with all this stuff you're talking about with the Loudoun County School Board and our government and Joe Biden and his band of merry men, or whatever you want to call them, is that, man, they're public servants. They work for Vince Coglianese and myself,
right,
and everybody else in this country.
Yep.
Like you said earlier, those are public meetings. They're there to facilitate the public and the children going to school.
Exactly right. Exactly right. No, the left has fundamentally subverted this relationship. You're right about that. They work for you. They're supposed to be public servants. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're totally right, Mark. And it's jarring. And you see this and you're like, wait a second. You flipped it on its head.
And hey, great job, Vince. I'll get off here because I know you got other people calling you, buddy.
Mark, you're a good man. Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate that. No, he's totally right. He's totally right. They do work for us. And here they are saying, actually, no, you don't get to speak. We've got the power now, and we're going to use it against you. That's the posture of the left, the posture of the Loudoun County School Board. And it needs to stop, obviously. Coming up, Laura Reese is going to talk to us from the Heritage Foundation about the invasion at our border, shocking images today out of El Paso, Texas, and this gigantic spending package that Republicans seem to be happy with slamming through the Congress this week. We'll tell you about it.